Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Diep with the Deep Dive, and today we will be having a special episode where we rank the films of the one and only Stanley Kubrick from worst to best. Stanley Kubrick is often seen and praised as one of the best filmmakers of all time, known for making polarizing, controversial, and thought-provoking films that dive into the darker side of human nature. Stanley grew up and came from a poor background, but never let that get in the way of his climb to the Mount Rushmore of directors. His constant creation of short films and the revenue he made showing them to his family and friends allowed him to budget his first feature film, Fear and Desire. Despite negative receptions, including from Kubrick himself, he didn't let that stop him from making Killer's Kiss, where much more of Kubrick's directing style and innovative shots would have him be discovered and led to what would ultimately become a career of critical hit after critical hit. Kubrick was known as meticulous and demanding when it came to the excessive amount of takes he would need to get the right shot, and it would often drive his cast and crew insane. What made him special was that he knew exactly what he wanted and always had different tactics of trying to get what he wanted. And that dedication to his craft resulted in 13 Oscar nominations, including one win. His visual style is so revered today that there are still rumors and conspiracy theories today that link Kubrick to the moon landing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. But anyways, let's not waste any more time and get to this list, shall we? I shouldn't even count Fear and Desire as a Kubrick film, given the fact that even Kubrick himself disowns this film as a Kubrick film. It was his first and lowest budget feature, and it was a post-production nightmare as the sound effects, and music for the film was butchered. It has glimpses of what would make Kubrick's filmography stand out in the future, as the film is essentially an anti-war PSA revolving around the nature of man in times of war, but the execution of it was sloppy and all over the place. It's more of a film that is experimental with half-baked ideas that never gets fully fleshed out because of Kubrick's inexperience at the time, and the limited budget as well. If you want to check this out at your own risk, it's on Amazon Prime for free. Killer's Kiss is a 1955 noir delving in an underground world involving a boxer and his romance with the taxi driver. Again, being that this is one of Kubrick's first projects, you can see where he's slowly growing as a filmmaker. The boxing sequences that are filmed were innovative for the time and was actually an inspiration to Martin Scorsese when he filmed Raging Bull. This was the first film to really give glimpses of how Kubrick uses his backdrops as settings and allusions to the story's direction. In terms of performances, I really enjoyed Irene Kane as the co-lead Gloria Price and Frank Silver as the jealous and murder-stricken Vincent who wants to kill our protagonist out of jealousy. Nevertheless, it's not terrible, just simply forgettable and not on par with what would follow in his career. I'm gonna be honest, Spartacus is pretty boring. While I do love the costume and production design and the serviceable score and lead performance by Kirk Douglas and the supporting performance by Charles Laughton, it plays out like a run-of-the-mill historical epic. Given that Ben-Hur came out the previous year, I can only imagine the post-epic gladiator drama fatigue everyone was suffering from. Kubrick also didn't get to write the screenplay for the film as much as he wanted to in terms of having free reign, and was under constant criticism from the author of the source material, which the film is based on, Howard Fast. Apparently, he was a huge dick to Kubrick and disagreed with almost every fundamental choice of the screenplay, direction, and performances. The film's cinematography was solid though, as it won the Academy Award for that category, which is ironic and kind of hilarious given the fact the Oscar went to Russell Meddy, who absolutely despised working with Kubrick, who was actually rumored to have taken over the photography of the film at one point. Other than that, it's a run-of-the-mill epic that drags out longer than it should at 197 minutes. Watch it at your own risk. Lolita is a controversial film that revolves around a subject matter that is definitely taboo and polarizing. Why? Well, let's just say that the film is based on a novel about a middle-aged professor who begins to have sexual feelings for a 14-year-old. Yeah, I know. So, if you're not comfortable with this type of subject matter and there's nothing that's going to change your mind about wanting to see it or not wanting to see it, then you don't need to waste your time. But a lot of the content in the film is toned down and left to the imagination, where you'd want to take your imagination? I don't need to know. The film plays like a comedy in most parts, as the absurdity of the situation is only highlighted more by the solid performances by James Mason and Sue Lyon as the titular Lolita. It's actually pretty crazy that both the character of Lolita and the actress Sue Lyon who's playing her were actually both 14 at the time. Besides the performances though, the film has a big issue of trying to mix genres, as it definitely feels like it doesn't really know what type of movie it wants to be. Is it supposed to be a dark comedy because there's not only one but two grown-ass men who are obsessed with this young girl? Or is it supposed to be a drama because of how depressing and pathetic it is that our protagonists are in this situation in the first place? Whatever Kubrick was going for in terms of the sexual themes of the movie is strangely misguided and shapeless, while the comedy bits are actually quite funny. If there's any reason to see this movie at all, it's actually because of Peter Sellers, who plays the supporting role in this movie, and he kills it as a creepy stalker who's constantly stalking Lolita from a distance. It's available to watch on Amazon Prime. Alright, this is where we start getting into the meat of the movies that I actually really like, so let's begin with The Killing. The Killing is a unique spin of the crime noir genre and was the first real look of what Kubrick could do as a filmmaker. Sterling Hayden stars in this film and is awesome as the film's lead, as a leader of a group of bank robbers who plan to steal millions from a horse race money count room. What follows is an almost documentary-style type film that isn't completely chronological, but it nevertheless builds up a unique and genuine suspense in the planning and robbery sequences themselves. The best part of this film, however, is the aftermath of the robbery, as everything just goes to complete crap, and every participant is trying to escape for their lives. The black and white cinematography is gorgeously lit, creating an ambiance of dread and escalating resolution that pairs on the side of despair and death for our robbers. It wasn't nearly talked about much at the time, but it has since been followed suit in the years to come with reappraisal and love. There's certainly moments here and there where it feels outdated in terms of the supporting performances and the very vibrant score for a film that handles into a dark subject matter, but it never fully takes away from what makes this movie entertaining in the first place. Even Quentin Tarantino himself said that this film was a huge inspiration for Reservoir Dogs, so the film has its place in the influential sense of things. It's available to purchase from the Criterion Collection and is also available on Amazon Prime. Here come the gunshots. Let's get this right off the bat. If Full Metal Jacket was as great of a film in its entirety as it was in its first half, this film would be much higher on my list, hell, maybe even top 5. But here's the issue. It isn't. The first half of Full Metal Jacket plays like a comedy of sorts that slowly morphs into a dark, unsettling look at psychological abuse that manifests into the wrong individual. The question of what happens when you strip someone of their own well-being and soul is done perfectly here in the first half. We focus on several individuals, but two in particular in Private Joker, played by Matthew Modine, and Private Pyle, played by Vincent D'Onofrio. And the training and abuse they suffer under Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, played by the impeccable Arlie Ermy, leads to two different results. By the way, of all the Kubrick films, this most certainly has the best opening scene of any of his films.
What's your name, scumbag?
Sir, Private Brown, sir!
Bullshit! From now on, you're Private Snowball. Do you like that name?
Yes, sir!
What have we got here? A fucking comedian, Private Joker. I admire your honesty. Hell, I like you. You can come over to my house and fuck my sister.
Sir, 5'9", sir!
5'9". I didn't know they stacked shit that high. Do you suck dicks?
Sir, no, sir!
Are you a Peter Pupper?
Sir, no, sir!
I'll bet you're the kind of guy that would fuck a person in the ass and not even have the goddamn common courtesy to give him a reach around.
And Arlie Ermy at least deserved an Academy Award nomination as the insult-spewing, marine-loving son of a bitch. He's hilarious, delirious, and stone cold at the same time. What makes his performance even more authentic was that Ermy was a drill sergeant in real life. So when it comes to the verbal insults, it just came easy to him. But let's get to the second half of the film where things start to fall apart. I get that Kubrick is trying to establish two different tones in this film, but the change is so sudden and the results are so underwhelming that it just makes you want to go back to the first half again. The depiction of the motto, "Ain't War Hell," is sprinkled all over once we see our soldiers in Vietnam, but the scope and the scale of the hell and of that war never feels grand, dark, or as bleak as Kubrick intended it to be. So how can the second act, which is set entirely in Vietnam, with bloodshed, lost sanity, and dread spread throughout, not be as equal or even more impactful than the first half that took place entirely in a boot camp? It's disappointing given Kubrick's career up to this point, but nevertheless, Kubrick's direction and the performances keep this movie afloat, and the first half is a masterpiece and worth the price of admission alone. It's available to check out on Amazon if you want to see it. Okay, For any Eyes Wide Shut fans out there, don't panic because it's only number 7 on my list. I absolutely enjoyed Eyes Wide Shut, and there are moments in it that are some of the finest work that Kubrick has ever done in terms of direction, mood, and performances captured from Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. It's a highly original, mysterious, and quite often nerve-wracking take on the views of sex, jealousy, uncertainty, and insecurities couples can have. Kubrick also implores of how society views sex, featuring underground worlds of sex cults that's filled with the faceless elite. What's haunting about it is we know there's something inhumane and bizarre about this world. And what's even more unsettling is that these societies can be run by people you cross paths with every day, and even people who are viewed as the social elite or humanitarians of the world. The contrast of Kubrick showing the late-night escapades of Cruise in a dreamlike setting despite the nightmare-like subtext is masterfully executed, and certainly one of his most beautiful looking films. Cruise and Kidman give some of their career best work, portraying a seemingly happy couple whose own sexual desires and insecurities lead to dramatic tension that can destroy their own trust in one another, even in a single conversation. It makes us question our own selves and how we view personal and depersonalized sexuality. There are rumors that this film was supposed to exploit even more of sex cult content, even delving into trafficking, and there were further rumors and conspiracy theories that Kubrick was actually killed and didn't die of a heart attack because there's a whole other cult out there, and yada. I'll refrain from my thoughts on this as I don't want to get Epsteined, but I do feel like there could have been a lot more explored in this film than what we got. There's so many themes regarding sex and love and trust that Kubrick explores in this picture, it never feels like it hits its highest peak. The Shining is a better film in general than it is a good horror movie, if that makes sense. This film is famous not only for the fact that Stephen King detested this adaptation of his novel, but that Kubrick drove literally everyone, especially Shelley Duvall, to complete madness while shooting this film. The Shining is gorgeously shot, eerily built up to its dramatic, intense final hour, and is one of Jack Nicholson's most iconic and memorable roles. The deep dive into madness that happens to Jack is memorable from the moment this unfortunate family takes a step into the haunted inn, once rumored to be above an Indio burial ground. The atmosphere that's created by the production team is fantastic, as we really feel just as lost and confused as our central characters in this maze of an inn with so many kept secrets. It makes it seem almost sort of like the environment itself is a character, as it's trapping everyone from any possible escape in the physical and mental sense. I also really enjoyed the performance by Danny Lloyd as Danny Torrance. It's one of the most original and best child acting performances I've seen in a horror film. This isn't necessarily a fantastic horror movie, as there's not actually too many scares as there are disturbing or shocking moments. It works better as a drama thriller about the growing animosity of family tension that has reached its boiling point than it does as a horror film. It could have been a perfect film if Kubrick took more time to explore the character of Jack Torrance though, and that's my biggest issue with The Shining, is that the development of Jack is never truly explored. When we meet him, he's already unsettling and weird and strange, so we're not as surprised when he goes full apeshit on his family because the tension was already there from the start. If there's one thing that Stephen King had a point about in his complaint about this film adaptation, it's that I genuinely agree that this would have been a much more profound and impactful transition if we had actually seen more of Jack's humanity before his insanity fully took over. Dr. Strangelove is an entertaining political satire that begs the question of what happens when the brink of nuclear destruction falls in the hands of the wrong person. And for 95 straight minutes, we see this story unfold from the perspective of 3 different groups. There's the war room with the president and his top military advisors trying to figure out a solution to this insane mess they have on their hands. We have the pilots who are in charge of dropping this ill-advised bomb, and a British Royal Air officer at an airbase who is dealing directly with the man responsible for launching his attack. That goes right into what Kubrick intended this film to be. It's very clear and adamantly stated by Kubrick himself that this entire film is poking fun at the sexual inadequacies of men and how those inadequacies lead us to make irrational decisions. There's tons of symbolism hidden in the film that you'll have to see for yourself, but it all plays a great part into the satire of the situation itself. What happens if those we trust to make those decisions are immature, futile idiots scrambling to find any means of a solution because they can't get past their own egos? It's a scary situation being presented, but the way the performances are captured, we can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Peter Sellers is the MVP of this movie, and he is fantastic playing 3 completely different characters in this film, and he is is the sole highlight and the main reason you need to watch this movie. He demonstrates his chameleon-like ability to play these characters with very different personalities, and it's a joy to watch. Paths of Glory is Kubrick at his most sentimental, especially when it comes to regards to the human spirit in the forefront of a war. Kirk Douglas plays Colonel Dax, a French officer who tries to defend certain soldiers from being executed on a charge of cowardice during a failed charge that was essentially a suicide mission. This film is a part war, part courtroom drama that questions the very foundation of war and how often the image of bravery and patriotism is viewed as more important than the actual lives of human beings. This is as big of an anti-war film that Kubrick could have possibly ever made. Where this film succeeds, where Full Metal Jacket didn't for me, is that it never loses the sense of what kind of film and what kind of story it wanted to tell. At its core, Kubrick wanted to, and mostly succeeded, in trying to convey that war turns human beings, specifically those in charge of war, into soulless and unconscionable individuals. Only when we are met with the possibility of death and our lives coming to an end do we often realize too late that we didn't value it enough. Depicting this theme in the setting of an inhumane court-martial proceeding to set an example to any troops who even think about going AWOL on suicide missions for the sake of war and winning a battle leaves a lot to be felt. A Clockwork Orange is most definitely one of Kubrick's most masterful controversial works. It is once again an adapted work depicting the psyche of our protagonist Alex, a teenage psychopath who relishes in committing heinous acts of violence, sex, and rebelling against the system. But to call his acts heinous is pretty much an understatement, and if you want more details, I don't really know if I should discuss it here, so just watch the film for yourself. We see his character go on an arc of exploitation, exoticism, nihilism, and pure brutality. His character is despiteful and evil, yet the career best performance given by Malcolm McDowell can manipulate an audience into being invested in his story and where it eventually goes. We see him go from being an unstoppable force of evil to reduced to nothingness shell of a man, back to a man who can't seem to suppress his own rage and lust for chaos. The dark sense of humor implored into such a dark and evil world is right up Kubrick's alley as we see the world through Alex's eyes. Everyone is full of shit. In this world, anyone and everyone is capable of committing evil, heinous acts. But those same evil people can either be exploited in ways that can destroy them or fully benefit them, which makes it all the more disturbing. It will certainly leave you feeling unsettled to say the least by film's end. There's lots of controversial, inhumane, and downright bizarre content, so watch with caution and understand that there is a point to the things that we see. It's not shock exploitation, but more of a social commentary regarding youth revolt and rewarding violent behavior. 2001: A Space Odyssey is not for everyone. So if you see it at number 3 and assume that you're gonna like it as much as I did, let me just give you a fair warning. It moves drastically slow, like incredibly slow. Like you can go to the bathroom, take a shower, and eat breakfast, fall asleep, come back, and still see the same scene occurring. But what makes 2001 so profound and studied and admired over time is that there's not a clear, concise answer to everything that we see. Like, what is this black monolith? What does it represent? What is the purpose of this mission we see our central characters in? What does the final 30 minutes of this film even mean? What's going on? How does it connect to the Dawn of Man intro? This film, in the simplest way I can break it down in, is about the evolution of mankind and our entire species. When we are introduced to the Dawn of Man with the apes, they see the monolith and it leads them to discovering a tool made from the remains of dead animals. This simple discovery, this one discovery, transitions into the future, where space travel is our next step in evolution and how far we've come over time. Then, when we get to the final sequence involving the giant baby overlooking the Earth, it's supposed to represent the next step of human evolution beyond our wildest imagination or anything we can have a control or understanding of. Technically, this film is gorgeous and still holds up and looks as mesmerizing today as it must have looked back in 1968. It's a film that grew on me over time, and the more I revisit it, there's more to like and explore. To me, it's one of the best science fiction films ever made. Barry Lyndon is a masterpiece in every sense of the word. It is honestly one of the greatest films that I have ever seen. It tells the story of Redmond Barry, an Irishman forced to leave his home after a quarrel, and from the moment he leaves for his travels, he goes through an entire lifetime of events. We are seeing a life on screen for 3 hours at this point. This includes fighting for the British and French army, helping conning aristocrats in card games, and finessing his way through a marriage in which he is the beneficiary to a life of wealth and luxury, only to find a way to lose it all. Let's get the obvious out of the way first by saying that this film has some of the best cinematography of all time. John Alcott was the cinematographer for this film, and his collaboration with Kubrick and the decision to use as much natural lighting as possible makes every frame of this movie look like you're walking through an art gallery for 3 hours. Moreover, onto that, we are experiencing a life before our very eyes over the course of nearly 2 decades. Barry Lyndon is a fascinating protagonist who was actually based on a real-life figure. Every shot, every scene, every moment is meticulously captured. The technical aspect of each scene and the use of mise-en-scene is incredible, from the war sequences taking place in the first half of the film to the verbal and physical confrontation Barry ensues in the second and third act. And I have never honestly seen a gentleman's pistol duel depicted in any films that's as exciting or perfectly paced and executed than in this film. Perhaps the most genuine and genius moment in this film comes at the very end, when we get a title card that basically sums up that despite Barry living the rest of his life as a simpleton, that the wealthy and socialist elite he crossed paths with over time ended up passing away and being forgotten over time. Are we truly different in class structure and societal means if we all end up in the same place one day? Does it really all matter if we all end up dying at some point anyway? This is all perfectly captured in Barry Lyndon, and to me is his finest work. So that is all I have today. I hope you enjoyed my ranking of Stanley Kubrick films from worst to best. If you agree, if you disagree, please leave a like in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Your support means everything to me and gives me drive to produce more content. Please subscribe, please like, please share, and I'll see you all next time.